Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Make a Better World. And this will be my last video on the presidential election, the upcoming presidential election. It's already Sunday, November 3rd, and as I'm sure you all know, the election is in 2 days, Tuesday, November 5th, and we'll know, I think, hopefully by 7 o'clock tomorrow night who our next president's gonna be. And let's hope to God it's Harris, because I don't even want to think about what's gonna happen if Trump wins this election. He was bad enough the first time around. I don't think I have to tell you guys this, because I assume most of you watching me on this channel are also for Harris. I know that I've had a few stragglers who seem to be coming in, and have had some, thumbs down on some of my recent videos. I hope I'm not being too preachy here, but I'm worried. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm very worried. I think this is a very critical election, probably, maybe the most critical election in the whole history of this country, or at least since the Civil War, I'd say. I mean, this could determine the difference of whether or not we remain a democracy. I don't think we'll be a democracy with Trump. He already said he wants to be a dictator, and he's already rigged the Supreme Court. He rigged them in such a way that they gave him immunity for all the 34 indictments against him. The guy should be behind bars for the rest of his life. But he got immunity from his own hand picked Supreme Court to run for president again. And, unfortunately, this election is turning out to be very close for reasons I can't begin to understand. I mean, what I see going on right now in this country, I've never seen this before in my life. And the only thing I could know of that compares to this is Nazi Germany. It was a lot like what happened when Hitler got elected and became the Fuhrer. And you guys all know that history. You know how that turned out. And I don't want to see the same thing happen here. And I really think it could. A lot of my friends have been telling me that I'm too extreme in my views. It's not going to be as bad as I think. I even still have a few friends who I'm pretty sure voted for Trump or are going to vote for Trump. I can't understand for the life of me why, but I'm still friends with them. Even though I completely disagree with their choice. I'm done my best to not let it get in the way of my friendship with them. But if Trump wins this thing, it's going to be like the Civil War all over again. I don't know what's going to happen if he wins, but my best guess, is that he will try to be a dictator. He already said he wants to, and he may become a dictator. He may be able to take the country by force and become our first dictator, our first king. And he could stay in power till he dies and make Vance a successor. And I don't want to see that happen, and I don't even want to think about what he's going to do as dictator, as so-called president number 47. You know, he already proposed Project 2025, which is a horrible thing. It would basically, and I don't think most Americans even realize this, but it would impose a 20% sales tax on the middle class. It would only help the rich. He only cares about himself and his rich cronies. I mean, he does not care about common people like you and me. And, he doesn't respect our democracy at all. And I don't want to say too much about Trump because I think you guys all know about him. But I'm worried and I'm scared. And I can't for the life of me understand why this election is close and why, something like 40%, at least 40% of Americans seem to be in favor of him and supporting him for whatever crazy reasons. And I don't think most of these guys are thinking. I mean, here's what I'm trying not to do. This is very hard for me. I'm trying not to become divided in my thinking about good Americans or bad Americans. I think most people in the world are generally good at heart. And I don't think 40% of Americans, the 40% who are voting or have voted for Trump, I don't think you guys are bad people. I don't think so. But I think most of you guys are ignorant, and I probably shouldn't be saying you guys because probably not very many of you are watching this channel. Uh, But, anybody who voted for Trump or is going to vote for Trump, I don't think you're a bad person. I just think you're very ignorant, and you're very, you're not on top of everything that's going on. Maybe you're worried about your own personal issues, and maybe you think Trump will help the economy. A lot of people seem to think that. I don't agree with that at all. The economy isn't even really that bad right now either. Inflation's gone way down, so is unemployment. Last I heard, unemployment in America is only 4%. I realize not everybody's being counted. The homeless people aren't being counted anymore, which so there's probably if you include all the homeless people, it's probably more like 10 or 15%. But it's still not as bad as it was during the Great Depression. We've been through worse. Yeah, we're struggling right now, and things definitely. I mean, America is not the same country I remember. I was born in 1962. I've talked about this before. I think at least during the 60s and 70s, we had a government that seemed to care about ordinary people, about the poor and the middle class and the working class. I think that kind of ended with Reagan, and it's only been getting worse since. We become a country for the rich, and I don't like it. And I think with Trump, it'll be 100 times worse than it was during the last 40 years. I don't even want to think about it. But think about what's at stake in this election. I mean, think about our democracy. Think about the government that our founding fathers envisioned for us. And I know a lot of people have told me, oh, our founding fathers were plantation owners from the South and they were hypocrites. They didn't really believe in democracy because they allowed slavery to continue. They don't know all of our history. I mean, I've been to the Jefferson Memorial. Yeah, I know that Thomas Jefferson was from Virginia. So was Washington. They were both plantation owners. They both had slaves, and I even know that Jefferson slept with some of the slaves and even had children with some of them. But, I've been to the Jefferson Memorial. I've read his quotes there. He had some amazing visions for humanity. He talked about the evils of bigotry. He talked about democracy and how important it is. And he even said, which I completely believe in, he said that if our government's not working, the American people have the duty to fight for our freedom, for our democracy. He was really on top of all that. And I think he would have been proud of the demonstrators during the 60s during Vietnam because they did exactly what Jefferson wanted them to do, And the other thing, don't forget that our founding fathers put separation of church and state into our Constitution. They did not want us to be a religious nation. We are not a religious nation. I hope to God we never become one. I've been agnostic most of my life, and it's fine. If you're religious, that's fine, but the government should have no say in anybody's religious views. Fuck that. Fuck God. I mean, I shouldn't say it because that's going to upset a lot of people, but, we should live in a country where we're allowed to say fuck God or fuck Jesus or fuck Buddha or whoever we want to fuck. I mean, we should be free to say that. Free speech, you know? I mean, and I've like I said, I've never been religious. I hope I'm not insulting any religious people here, and maybe I'm not respectful enough of religious people. But I know about the Christian nationalists, who I think is a horrible, horrible organization, and this has been going on for a long time. Christian nationalists, they supported Reagan. They supported all the Republican presidents we've had since Reagan, and the Christian nationalists, according to them, everybody who doesn't agree with them is going to go to hell. They're all serving the devil and they're going to go to hell. Well, anybody can say that. You can say that about anybody. I mean, yeah, maybe I don't like certain groups of people. I'm not going to say who I don't like. I try not to be racist. I'm not that kind of person. But, if there was a group of people I didn't like, I could say that I could manipulate the Bible, or I could come up with my own Bible and say, oh, these people are serving the devil. They deserve to be in hell. I'm not going to do that because I don't believe in hell and I don't believe in the devil. But I do believe in good and evil. I do believe that there is absolute good and absolute evil. And I think most of us have a moral compass, whether or not it's because of religion. And I see Trump as evil. I do. And I think he's the closest thing in America I've seen to Hitler. Hitler was evil. I think just about everybody in the world would agree that Hitler was evil. I mean, he was responsible for the death of 50 million people, including 6 million Jews and 6 million other people, homosexuals and gypsies, who all were either burned or gassed and put in horrible crematoriums and concentration camps. I know about all that shit. Okay, and horrible, horrible. I mean, unbelievable that that happened. And it could happen here. And I mean, I think for most of American history, nobody believed we could have another Holocaust, especially here in the United States. But people used to say the same thing about Germany. Germany was a very, very progressive country. As a matter of fact, I think they were the most progressive country in the world in the early 20th century. They had great intellectuals, great artists, great scientists, great musicians, um, and then they had Hitler. And now we've got Trump. But we also have Harris. Maybe I've sent a lot of enough negatives for now. But Harris, I like Harris. I mean, it's funny. A lot of people I've talked to, a lot of people say it's a choice of the lesser of two evils. I don't see Harris as evil at all. I see Harris as good. I have a lot of hope for Harris. I don't know that much about her yet, but I do know she was a really successful DA in California. I know that she worked with the president of Mexico to keep out the hardcore Mexican criminals, the drug dealers, and she didn't need a wall for that. And she made sure that, the president of Mexico made sure that only legal immigrants were coming across, which he did. So kudos to her for that. And I think she could do the same thing as president. I think she could, make sure that we keep out all the violent criminals. And, that's one thing I really like about her. She's been very tough on violent crime. Just because, she's a woman doesn't mean she can't be tough. I know there's tough women. My mom's a tough woman. She was tough with me, too tough with me, I think. I'm not even a criminal. But if mom could be so tough with me, if Harris can be half as tough on violent criminals as my mom was with me, I'll be very proud of her. And I think she'll be able to keep them out. And she'll also be very tolerant. I mean, as you guys know, she's not only a woman, but she's part African American and part Asian American. So, I'm sure she's very tolerant of every ethnic group. And kudos to her for that. She's not prejudiced. I don't think she's prejudiced against anybody. The only person we need to be prejudiced against right now is Donald Trump, Donald J. Trump. I am 100% prejudiced against you, Donald Trump. I don't care what the shit happens to you. Maybe a lot of people think I'm not merciful enough. I know we have to be kind to our enemies. That's what Jesus says. But I'm not a Christian. I mean, it's funny. I used to hate a lot of people. I had a lot of hardships in my life. I had a lot of bullies. When I was a kid, I didn't have any friends growing up. There were all these kids that used to bully me. I hated them for years. Fortunately, I never did anything bad to any of them, but I used to fantasize about it. I don't want to. I don't care about these people anymore. I haven't seen them in over 40 years. I don't know what they're doing with their lives now, but I guess you could say I've forgiven them because they're out of my life. I'll probably never see them again. I hope I don't. But even if I did, I wouldn't do anything bad to them. I'd probably be polite to them now. I can't forget what they did to me, but I think I would forgive them in the sense that I would just move on. I've even forgiven my parents. My parents gave me a lot of shit too. I mentioned my mom, but I've forgiven her. She's already 88 years old. I don't think she has that much longer to go. But she's not a terrible person. She just had her own views about parenting, which I don't agree with, and she is a child psychiatrist. And but we don't really see eye to eye. But I've forgiven my mom for everything, all the hardships she put me through. I've forgiven everything. I don't hate anybody. The thing I'm getting at right now is that I've given up on hating anybody that I've ever known in my life personally. I'm past that point. I was out for revenge for about 30 years. I'm not anymore. I don't hate anybody anymore. But I guess you could say the only person I hate, and I've never met him, I hope I never do meet him, but I do hate Donald Trump. I'm not ashamed to say that. I hate you, Donald Trump. I hate what you've already done, and I hate what you're doing right now. And I really hope to God that Harris beats pants off of you. And then I hope she gets you locked up because you belong in jail. I think that should be Harris's first act as president, getting Trump locked up and all his cronies and restoring our democracy. I mean, I think she believes in democracy. I think she believes in our personal freedom. And I think that's what she wants to do is make sure that we're a democracy again. And I'm very proud of her for that. And I actually saw her live. I went to her rally about a month ago right here in Las Vegas. I saw her speak for half an hour. I love her. I mean, I love her speeches. She's a wonderful speaker and very joyful. I mean, she's smiling in this picture. Maybe I'm not smiling right now. Maybe I'm not as hopeful and joyful as Harris is right now. If she wins, I will be a lot more joyful, but I'm not going to be joyful until I see her defeat Trump. And God, I mean, what else do I want to say right now? I guess I've sounded pretty angry so far. Maybe I should just touch on some points about democracy and freedom and what it really means and what it means to me. You know, I mean, yeah, I think freedom is a key to happiness. We can't be happy unless we're free. And that is one of the perks of a democracy. People are free under a democracy, but you have to understand what freedom means. And freedom also means respecting others. It means that everybody's free, not just you, but even people you don't like. I mean, we have to respect other people. And we have responsibility. With freedom and with rights come responsibilities. I think that's one thing that our founding fathers didn't really spell out enough. We all have responsibilities as American citizens, both to ourselves and to our neighbors and to others. And if you want to bring some religion in this, love thy neighbor. I do agree with that. I do agree with some quotes in the Bible. I agree with love thy neighbor. I agree with do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's some great sayings in the Bible. I just don't believe in the literal truth of it. And I don't like organized religion. I wish it wasn't organized. From my view about religion is that it should be personal and it should, if it helps you live a better life, that's fine. But I don't think anybody has the right to impose their religious views on anyone else. That's part of the responsibility of religion. But imposing religion on others, that's a form of coercion. And coercion is very bad. Coercion is almost as bad as being mugged. I mean, yeah, if somebody points a gun at you and tells you to give you all your money, I mean, obviously they're going to give you their money because they don't want to die, right? But it's not their personal freedom to do so. It's not, oh, this is nice. A guy's holding a gun at me and I don't need my money anyway. I'll make him happy and give him my money and we all can all say kumbaya. That's not how it works. Somebody points a gun at you, robs you at gunpoint, makes you give you your money, you're scared to death. You might shit in your pants. You'll give them all your money just so you can live. And then you'll probably call the police on them. It might not do any good anymore because the police isn't that reliable anymore. But, in theory, that's what you're supposed to do at least. So just think about that a little bit. Think about all of our freedoms. And by the way, I'm not a fan of the Second Amendment at all. I think guns should be illegal. I don't think ordinary American citizens should be allowed to own guns. And I've talked to a lot of people that disagree with me on this. I mean, I've heard a lot of persuasive arguments why we should be able to have guns, to protect ourselves, that, in self-defense, yeah, you have a right to kill someone if they're threatening your life. And that's true. I agree with that. But if we didn't have guns, then there wouldn't be as dangerous criminals walking around. And maybe we'd just be able to beat up people who are threatening our lives. Maybe I'm a little too much of an idealist. I really don't know. Another argument I've heard, if you look at Nazi Germany, I mentioned Nazi Germany a few minutes ago. Maybe if the Jews in Europe had been allowed to own guns, the Gestapo couldn't have rounded them up and taken them to concentration camps. I have heard that argument, and I think it was kind of the same thinking, when we were becoming a country. We didn't want British to take us over again. We just rebelled against them, and we didn't want British soldiers to come in and with guns, and we didn't have guns to defend ourselves. I can understand that. But we're not living in that kind of world anymore. The way I see guns right now, I see there's a lot of domestic violence with them. A lot of street shootings. There's been record numbers of horrible serial killings. Some of it by teenagers, some of it by kids. I mean, anybody could buy a semi-automatic and hold up the whole school. And schools have guns now. They didn't when I was a kid. We become much more dangerous. I really hate guns. Fortunately, my family never owned a gun, and I'm glad they didn't, because I probably would have shot myself. I was very depressed when I was a teenager. But at least I didn't have that problem. The only time I've ever used a gun in my life was at camp, and I hated my camp, by the way. That was one of the places. That's probably the place I got bullied the worst of anywhere. I went to this horrible camp on this island in Washington's estate. And one of our activities was riflery. And actually, I enjoyed riflery. We got to shoot these big rifles at these targets on a wooden wall about 50 feet away. I was pretty good at it. But that's the only time in my life I've ever used a gun. And I don't ever want to see or use a gun again in my life. I hate guns. And I hate violence in general. And it's probably about time we had a woman president because I think women tend to be a lot less violent than men. I mean, I just said that Kamala Harris is tough and she's tough where she needs to be tough, but I don't see her tough in the sense of some like a female version of Rambo or anything. I mean, I don't think Harris wants to hold up a gun, but she's. I think she's just perfectly fit to be a very good, very effective president of this country. And I think women. Let me just talk a little bit about women's rights right now. I think women are just as capable as men, overall. I mean, of course, men have certain strengths that women do, physical strength mostly. Women don't have the same, in general, physical strength as men. It's true. There's no women weightlifters that can lift 500 pounds. You don't see female football players, female linebackers. So men in general are physically stronger than women, of course. But, I mean, men and women aren't completely equal. We're different genders, and women have other strengths. Women are much more intuitive than men. I'd say men tend to be more left brain and women tend to be more right brain. I've gotten criticism for saying this, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. There aren't a lot of female mathematicians. I mean, now there's a lot of female doctors and lawyers and business women and every other kind of white collar profession, but there aren't a lot of women mathematicians or engineers. There are a lot of women scientists, but I think women are a little more right brain. And actually, I mean, in all fairness, I think women have better spatial intelligence than men because spatial intelligence is right brain. My spatial intelligence isn't very good, even though I'm a math prodigy. I have a very bad sense of direction, you know. And I'm sure Kamala Harris has a lot better sense of direction than I do. Maybe she could help me if I got lost here in Las Vegas. But so women have certain strengths, and I don't think it's just right brainness is their strength. I think another strength women have versus men is I think they're calmer. I think women tend to, just kind of, look at a scenario, look at all aspects of a scenario and reason a little bit better about what's a better course of action instead of just reacting. I don't think women are as reactive as men. And I think a reactiveness is a very bad quality. I think men react too much. I think men are too violent and men react too much. Men are too much brawn. But I think women actually, in terms of overall intelligence, maybe it's true that men are a little bit more left brain, but not only are women more right brain, but I'd say women in general. I'll bet that women have a higher average IQ than men. I'll bet they do. I mean, I don't know if there have been studies on this, but all the women, most of the women I've met most of my life have been pretty smart. I mean, I know we have some dumb blonde stereotypes, but I don't think there's much truth to any of that. I heard that Marilyn Monroe was actually very intelligent. She only acted dumb in her movies, and nobody took her seriously, which is probably one of the reasons she committed suicide. And women. I think most of the women I met, like all the women in my family have been very smart, and all my girlfriends have been very smart. I don't like dumb people. Not just dumb women. I don't like dumb men either. And I met a lot more dumb men than dumb women. And maybe that sounds prejudiced to talk about dumb people, but maybe dumb people just aren't using their brains. Maybe they have more brains than they realize. They just don't like to use them. Like the people who are going to vote for Trump. Maybe they're not all dumb. As a matter of fact, the two friends of mine I said who are voting or have voted for Trump, they're both very smart. And I can't for the life of me figure out why they wanted to vote for Trump. But I think most of his supporters are pretty dumb. You don't have to do much thinking. I saw a bumper sticker about 20 years ago said, vote Republican, it's easier than thinking. And I see so much truth to that. I mean, the people who I've talked to a lot of people. I take Uber. I can't drive right now because I don't have car insurance. So I've been taking Uber for the last year. And I usually talk to the Uber drivers. And lately I've been talking a lot about politics with most of them. Most of them are pro Harris. I'd say like 80 to 90% of the Uber drivers I've had seem to be on the left, seem to be Democrat, liberal. But I'd say, the other 10% or 20%, I've met some Trump Uber drivers. And, I don't think they're right. They've told me some, what they think are very convincing arguments why they like Trump. But I don't think they're really thinking it through that much. I think they've made up their mind a long time ago. I mean, I watched Trump today. He's a joke. I mean, maybe he's not as much of a joke as he appears, but what's with driving the garbage truck and pretending to be on a McDonald's employee and saying that the Haitian immigrants are eating our pets? I mean, just to me that's idiotic. All those things are just idiotic to me. But what I don't understand is how so many people are going along with this idiocy. I mean, who in their right mind could be convinced? I watched both presidential debates. I watched Trump's first debate against Biden. I even think Biden won that debate. Biden, he's an old guy, and I think it's really good he stepped down and let Harris run against Trump instead of him because I don't think he would have won. But, I watched the second debate, Harris versus Trump. I mean, Harris just nailed it. I mean, Harris, she was very professional in everything she said. I don't think she lied about anything. I think everything she said checked with all the facts, and she said really good stuff about what she intends to do as president and what's wrong with Trump. And it is about moving forward with her and moving backward with Trump. And yeah, maybe a lot of people want to go back to the 1950s. But let me tell you something. The 1950s weren't so great. Even though I was born in 62, I don't remember the 50s firsthand. I know a lot about it. And yeah, we have this kind of myth where we idolize the 50s. We had Happy Days. We've had a lot of movies, about nostalgia. 50s, Grease. Yeah, we love the 50s. Back to the Future. Martin McFly ends up in 1955. But let me tell you some things about the 50s. They weren't so great. I know this for a fact. First of all, we didn't have civil rights yet. We still had Jim Crow laws in the South. Blacks were still being discriminated against very, very badly. We had forced segregation. We had institutionalized segregation. And black people could not get the same kind of jobs as white people. And most people in the country thought of them as inferior people. Most of the white people did. So I'm really glad we don't have that anymore. I mean, I think Martin Luther King was one of the greatest. I ranked him as the second most influential person of my lifetime, right after Nelson Mandela. Certainly the most influential American. I guess there were some other close calls like JFK. He was pretty great. We've had other great Americans. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they were great industrialists. We wouldn't have PCs or cell phones without them. And they're been great leaders too. I mentioned JFK. Unfortunately, both of them were assassinated, and so was RFK. But we've had some other pretty great leaders during my lifetime. We've had a few pretty great presidents. I even think Jimmy Carter was a pretty great president. I didn't think so when he was president, but looking back, he He was just a little ineffective, but he was very honest and he cared about the right things. He cared about everything that mattered. And I kind of see Biden the same way, you know. I think a lot of people see Biden the same way they saw Carter in the 70s. They see him as weak and old and ineffective, and they blame him for inflation, you know. But, you know, it's easy to blame the president for a bad economy. And that is a big thing that's going around these days. You know, people think that our economy will be better with Trump because it was better the first time. It wasn't so great. You know, don't let the numbers fool you. You know, I mean, you'll see statistics on the, you know, the rate of inflation and the rate of unemployment. But you know, there's something you should keep in mind. I don't mention unemployment and how misleading that is. Unemployment only counts people in the workforce, people who are looking for jobs or working. There's a lot of people who just stopped looking a long time ago. There's a lot of homeless people out there. I think they should be counted as unemployed. And that's probably about 10% of the country. And you know, there's about 2% of the country that's not even counted the census anymore. There's people who we don't even know where they live anymore, or they don't have a permanent residence. I think there's about 5 or 6 million Americans like that, maybe even more. You know, there's a lot of invisible people in this country right now, and I don't think most of them are doing that well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be invisible. You know, but you know, so don't be fooled by the unemployment numbers. Also, don't be fooled by the inflation figures either. Yeah, it's low right now, but you have to look at prices of different things. I mean, yeah, maybe the price of basics, price of groceries isn't going up there anymore. I mean, we're not starving in this country, okay? Maybe a few people are, but for the most part, we have enough food for everybody in this country. I mean, that is a good thing about this country. You know, we're not starving. You know, even though we are becoming more like a third world country, I wouldn't say there's very many starving Americans right now. You know, you can always, most people can afford McDonald's or they can afford, you know, whatever, you know. So I don't think we're starving. But, you know, there are people living in the streets, there are people without a roof over their heads. And I think that's pretty bad, you know, and there are people with no job opportunities. You know, there are people with seems like they don't have any opportunities to get anywhere, which I think is very, very sad, you know. But what am I trying to get at here? I mean, you know, yeah, and then there's different, you know, there's different types of things you can buy. I mean, people can't afford houses anymore, okay? I mean, you don't see that in inflation figures. If you look at the price of housing, you know, that one good thing about the 50s, just about everybody in America could afford a house. People had roofs over their heads in the 50s, you know, it was the swell years. You had a swell house in the suburbs, you had your swell neighbors, you know. Economically, we were pretty good shape in the 50s. I didn't say what else was wrong with the 50s. I talked about racism and Jim Crow laws. What about sexism? Almost all women in America were housewives in the 50s. Women were second class citizens. Women didn't have jobs. Hardly any women had jobs. And if they did have jobs, they were very menial jobs like secretaries or, you know, store clerks or whatever. You know, women did not have good jobs back in the 50s. That didn't start till the 60s or 70s, you know. And you know, so it wasn't such a great time, the 50s. It really wasn't. I'm glad I wasn't alive then. Sometimes I wish I could have been born about 10 years earlier so I could have experienced the 60s in its full glory. Because I would have really enjoyed demonstrating against Vietnam, you know, joining the hippies. I wouldn't have gone to Vietnam, even if I'd been drafted. And yeah, maybe I would have been beaten up by cops, but I would have been happy doing what I'm doing anyway. You know, might have even snuck across the border into Canada. I'm thinking about doing that now. I probably won't because I already had a fight with my mom about it. She doesn't want me to leave the country, you know. And then, you know, leaving the country is kind of like running away, you know. Kind of like, you know, I said I don't believe in mainstream religion, but if you look at the story of Moses, you know, I guess he was forced to flee after, you know, and then he fled across the desert in Egypt into Sinai, I think. But then they needed him in Egypt, you know, so he had to go back and, you know, make sure that the Pharaoh let the slaves go in Egypt. You know, gave him the 10 plagues. I don't believe that story, but I guess the reason I mention it is because I have to stay here in America, even if Trump wins. I have to fight him. I have to fight. What I'm going to do. I'll tell you. I don't know what he's going to do as president or as king or whatever he makes himself. But whatever happens with Trump, I'm going to stay in this country and I'm going to fight till my death for our democracy because that's what our founding fathers wanted. That's what this country's supposed to be. We're supposed to be a free country of the people, by the people, and for the people. And as long as I'm one of those people, I'm going to do everything in my power to fight for our democracy, even if it means being clubbed in the head, even if it means being killed. I'll be a martyr for democracy. I hope it doesn't come to that, but I will you know. And if I have to kill anybody else in self-defense, I'll do that too. If there's a cop about to club me to death, if I can kill him first, I'll do that. But I wouldn't kill other than in self-defense. I've never killed anybody in my life. I came pretty close once. I almost killed a woman by accident, a car accident I had about 45 years ago. I've regretted it ever since. Fortunately, she didn't die. She tried to sue me for about $150,000, but my car insurance took care of it. I'm glad she lived. But that's as close as I ever came to killing anybody. I don't know if I should have mentioned this here because this might have shocked a lot of you guys. I've done some things I'm not proud of in my life. And but other than that, I've never intentionally killed anybody. I've never fought in a war. I've never even intentionally beat anybody up. I mean, one reason is because I'm small. I'm too small to do it, probably. But I've never physically harmed anybody, at least not intentionally. And yeah, maybe I've insulted a lot of people. I know I've insulted a lot of people over the years. And I've said some pretty terrible things to a lot of people. I regret some of that. I'm not a perfect person. I've made mistakes. Kind of like, Freddie Mercury said, and We Are the Champions. Yeah. And bad man mistakes, I've made a few. But I've had my share of sand kicked in my face, and hopefully now I'm coming through. We will rock you and we are the champions. So let's be the champions and let's do the right thing. And let's vote for Harris. And if Harris wins, I'm gonna have a victory party. I'm gonna join as many of my friends as I can. One thing I didn't mention for the last month or so, I've been campaigning for Harris. I mentioned that I went to her rally right here in Vegas about a month ago. And for the last 3 weeks, I've been canvassing neighborhoods here in Las Vegas. I'll probably do it tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last day before the election. I think I will go back to the Democratic headquarters and I'll pick a neighborhood and knock on people's doors and try to get as many of them to vote for Harris as I can. Because she needs to win this thing. She really does. I mean, that's what's at stake here. And I think you're a very good person, Harris, and I think you'll make a very good president. I really do. I mean, she may be the best president we've had since FDR, or at least since JFK. I have faith in you, Harris. I think you'll do the right thing, and I think you'll make a really good president. And I hope you get enough cooperation from Congress to do everything you set forth to do to fix this country. Hopefully we'll have a turnaround. I mean, hopefully, the people who voted for Trump, maybe they'll come to their senses under Harris at some point. And maybe we'll end up doing the right things. Maybe we will really make America great again. Maybe they'll do the kind of things I've been talking about in my other videos, like try to, put Americans into space again, fix our education, fix our health care, give more people jobs, make us a productive nation again, gain our respect with the rest of the world, have more tolerance here at home, have all that. And I think we could be a great country again, but we have to do the right things. And another thing, I mean, remember what JFK said when he got elected? Ask not what our country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Keep that in mind. We have to participate. We have to do some things ourselves. And Gandhi said the same thing pretty much. We must be the change we wish to see in the world. So don't leave yourself out of it. And I think the first thing you have to do not to leave yourself out of it is vote. And vote for Harris. You can make a difference by voting for Harris. You can always make a difference. And you can make a difference in ways you're not even aware of. Like George Bailey did in It's a Wonderful Life. He wasn't aware of all the great things he did for everybody he cared about. He had to have his guardian angel show him that when he was ready to jump into the river. So think about that too. You've probably done a lot of great things already, as long as you have a good heart, as long as you have a good moral compass, and you're doing the right things. You probably have been doing a lot of right things your whole life. And do one more right thing. I think all I'm asking you guys for right now, the one right thing you can do is vote for Harris on Tuesday if you haven't already. And I guess I'll just finish with that because I probably pissed a lot of you off already. But anyway, just vote for Harris. Good luck to you, Harris. I think you'll make a great president. I'm really looking forward to your presidency, and I'm looking forward to see America turning around again. And I think we will under you. So I think I'll just finish with that. Anyway, go Harris. Let's make a better world, and I'll see you guys next time.